Good morning. As trade union movement today, we are confronted by a triple crisis of public health during the pandemic, an epic economic crisis, and the impending climate crisis. We are in a period of change, and we have a limited window to determine whether this change is for better or worse. Workers are paying the price for responses to the pandemic, and this has reinforced our resolve to organize workers, fight for decent work, and the return to secure jobs. The trade unions are fighting hard to negotiate and implement collective bargaining agreements. It is even harder to fight for the rights of those that are contractual, temporary, daily wage, or self employed. These unprotected workers depend on their daily earnings to subsist and have no reserve savings to endure economic shocks. They often live in cramped spaces where distancing is impossible, with poor access to water, healthcare, and social protection. The lockdown has come to an enormous social cost in many countries. Domestic violence increased dramatically during the lockdowns, and victims were unable to access any support. Lockdown in many developing countries resulted in the mass movement of people when workers were left without means to survive, starving and desperate to find their way back to their rural homes. Migrant workers have been abandoned by employers and are stranded in a foreign country. Challenges will continue as workers are forced to compete for increasingly constrained resources, making migrant workers even more vulnerable as they are often without political, economic, and workers' rights. The interconnected nature of the pandemic reveals that inequality is not sustainable and exposes the vulnerability of all countries to shock under the current model of globalization. The world cannot afford to have so many poor people living precariously, as this erodes social cohesion that is essential for democracy and peace. And this has given rise to the right-wing fascist governments that are willing to exercise brutal force to uphold their oppressive system. The economic situation is worsening despite the resuscitation of the economy, with millions returning to work amidst uncertainty and fear. Millions have been infected with the coronavirus. Hundreds of thousands have already died, and the worst is yet to come. Tens of millions of workers have already lost their jobs, and more devastation is on the way, with more than half of the workers globally are expected to lose their jobs. There is no doubt that the triple crisis we face in public health, the economy, the climate, requires a global response, and that global response requires global solidarity. As I recognize the frontliners in the fight against COVID-19, the medical workers, the essential workers, I would like to recognize the BWI affiliates who were at the early stage in the front line of defending our members, building wood forestry workers under lockdown, migrant workers stranded, men and women workers who lost their jobs, workers returning to unsafe workplaces. I want to recognize the abilities of our leaders, especially the youth and the women workers who were quick to adjust and learn to use new technology like Zoom to be able to communicate, educate, and organize workers. We have put global solidarity on speed dial. The crises have brought global solidarity closer to every affiliate. Through the BWI website, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Zoom, virtual meeting hall, webinar, We have been in contact with around 250 affiliates, sharing their stories of struggles and victories. We have communicated and distributed information materials and reached out to tens of thousands of workers. I also want to recognize our global staff who continue to work online, learning new skills, being like in a call center or making video. Some are Zoom experts or social media experts, so they can effectively communicate, assist, and support our affiliates. It feels like that I have been in 4 continents in one day without traveling. It's like having global solidarity on a speed dial. We are mobilizing global solidarity. On April 28, International Workers' Memorial Day, more than 130 affiliates participated in various global actions in workplaces, at home, and in the social media. Our message translated in many languages, protect workers, stop COVID-19, have reached tens of thousands of members and workers. Despite the massive lockdown in many countries, we have seen massive virtual solidarity action on April 28 and May Day. Multinational must put life before profit. We reach out to multinational companies to urge them to take responsibility of protecting their workers throughout the supply chain. Some companies have responded positively, but some continue to take advantage of the crisis to terminate workers. That's why we are intensifying our campaign against Lafarge-Houssif. Our humanitarian response. Many of our affiliates are on the front line of humanitarian assistance to workers. We have raised 750,000 Swiss francs for our humanitarian response to the crisis, assisting workers in desperate situations to meet their immediate needs. Many of us are starting to talk about the post-COVID scenarios. I'm not sure if we want to go back to normal times when workers were undervalued, underpaid, and deprived of their basic human rights. I'm not sure if we want a new normal, which is the same mantra used during the post 2008 financial crisis when most of the workers were left behind. It's time to lift everyone up and build a better future for all. We are builders and we know how to build better. We must organize, negotiate, campaign for three key strategic agenda: resilience, recovery, and reform. Resilience. Building the resilience of organized workers. We must defend our fundamental rights to organize and bargain collectively. And now we should demand that a healthy and safe workplace is a fundamental right and a basic human rights. Organizing must be ramped up to achieve safe working places to strengthen collective bargaining. Recovery. Building a sustainable, equitable, and just economic recovery. Construction will be a key driver, and we need labor-intensive construction projects, green stimulus, the Green New Deal that prioritizes retrofitting buildings and green infrastructure to reduce our carbon footprints. Recovery should not just mean more jobs, but better and safer jobs. Reform. Building a strong trade unions ensure that workers have a legitimate voice in decision making on issues affecting their economic interest. Unions also play a significant political role in the struggle for dignity, freedom, and democracy. Democracy is essential in times of crisis. Workers need unions now more than ever, and trade union must embody hope. If we are to build a better world out of this crisis, we must be bold. United as BWI, we must be at the front line of the working class struggle. The fundamental rights and interests of the workers and their trade unions are at the core of building a better world. Thank you. Stay safe. Build a better world for all.